Could you briefly define the terms white magic and black magic?
Okay, white magic and black magic. First, the word magic itself gets a bad rap out there.
It does. It has associations that aren't intended.
Yes, and many of the associations are actually related more to black magic.
Oh.
But magic is just a word that means creative expression. Anything that is creative is magic. And the difference between white magic and black magic is, in the simplest sense, is simply the difference between the magic created by the higher soul, or the soul itself, versus the magic created by selfish personality. Black magic is simply selfish magic. White magic is the magic that is the creative process that's governed by an urge to serve a larger whole. That's what the soul wants to do. The soul wants to express itself through the personality. It wants to do it without the personality getting in the way, which is the problem. And in so doing, it wants to make an uplifting contribution to something beyond itself. And that act is magic. Anything that is brought forward into the world for the purpose of making a difference for others, or somehow leaving the world better than you brought it, than you came into it in your own way. In a way, that's a white magical act. Whether it's the artist, the teacher, the secretary, the plumber, it doesn't matter. Every context of human living has the capacity to bring something good into it and make that uplifting contribution. So when you're inspired by something deep inside you, when you're inspired by an intuition or a creative thought that you know has an ability to make something better, it's white magic in a way. Black is a term that is sometimes used in some of the occult literature to represent something so high that it's beyond our grasp, and therefore it's black. It's black because it's a darkness that is just indicating a degree of ignorance and a region of awareness yet to achieve.
Nice. So it's like a veil in front of something behind it.
A veil behind a higher, bigger, wider reality. And there's always a veil of that nature too. Just symbolically, I mean, the blackness of space is what's needed in order to see the brilliance of the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And the stars represent points of divine light. So sometimes it creates the necessary contrast for light to be realized. The word light and revelation go hand in hand. We use the word light to suggest, for instance, we say we would like to shed light on something. It suggests that we're trying to bring awareness to something. One of the important concepts to keep in mind is that light is known by what it reveals. Light is known by what it reveals. So when you look at that leaf, because light is reflecting off of it, you see that leaf. So light is known by what it reveals. But that's true, that's just physical light that you're talking about, but that's true of every kind of light. What about the light of knowledge? What about the light of love? What about the light of purpose, the light of devotion, the light of idealism? I can list 100 types of light. All of them are revelatory in consciousness. I don't mean black magician in the dark, sinister way. In fact, I mean black magic as a natural process. In other words, all of us have had thousands of incarnations of being what I would call the unconscious black magician.
It's just low-level magic.
It's just low-level creativity. It's just creativity coming from your personality, because that's where you are on the path.
Right.
You're a personality, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just where you are, and you create from that consciousness. Fine. That's kind of unconscious or natural black magic.
But it brings pain into the world.
It does. It does bring pain into the world, and yet it's part of the human experience. It's part of it. Because this philosophy would say that the goal of human evolution, well, back up, that humanity evolves through what is called the principle of harmony through conflict. Harmony through conflict. We are the only kingdom of nature that is governed by that principle in such a strong way, which means that Because it's in the human kingdom that we see our duality, we see a higher and lower part of us, eventually that leads to an inner struggle between the higher and lower part of us, and that reflects itself in the outer world between people that are really waking up to that higher part and trying to live it, and a huge number of people that haven't woken up yet and are still living the lower. And that creates huge tensions in society. So it's important to see all of society as like a spectrum of consciousness. And the front edge of that is the people that are sort of on the cutting edge of higher vision of possibilities. And the back edge represents, you might say, younger souls, but it's the souls that have not woken to that higher potential, and therefore are likely to stay more in a selfish mode and conform to the status quo. And there's nothing wrong with it, because they are where they are. That's just where they are, because they're that wherever they are at one time in a previous life you were, you know. So we have to remember that. But nonetheless, with that spectrum of consciousness comes inherent conflict as humanity tries to move forward. And that tension is what is needed in order to create a breakthrough into a higher order. So it's harmony through conflict. It's not harmony and conflict. It's harmony through conflict. It's through our conflict with our inner life and the conflict we have between everything. The conflict between, like, humanity is now in conflict with Mother Nature.
Exactly.
Humanity is in a huge conflict around how to understand right utilization of resources, money. There's huge conflicts that are going on a global level, and this is just a necessary polarity that creates the tension that will create the breakthrough, but it's painful, and it's just inherent in the human kingdom.
The purpose of black magic, there is no sense in it, is it?
Well, it has a sort of indirect purpose. It facilitates the building of the ego, and it facilitates the development of separative consciousness, which, as I said, is a necessary step on the journey, but eventually must be let go for a higher step.